So it's 7 o'clock. Everyone's here. Wonderful.
We've
So
got a special guest. There's Bean.
being, yeah, if you hear banging, it's Blaze trying to break into my office. So
Bean.
welcome everyone to the Town of Norfolk Board of Health meeting for October 25th, 7 p.m. Zoom. It's a virtual meeting in accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions in the open meeting law. Due to the coronavirus emergency outbreak, the October 25th, 2022 at 7 p.m. public meeting of the Norfolk Board of Health shall be physically closed to the public to avoid group congregation. Alternate public access to this meeting can be utilized using the Zoom virtual meeting software, and the application will allow users to view the meeting and send a comment or question to the chair via the chat function. Submitted text comments, questions may be read into the record at appropriate moments in the meeting if they're in line with the town's public comment policy. The meeting will be recorded for future rebroadcast. The Zoom link is available online, and it is also the NCTV live stream of all town meetings is also on the YouTube channel. So we will start with the public hearing.
We have sorry, somebody's sitting on my agenda.
So the public hearing for 43 King Street.
We have a for 43 Cleveland Street.
Yep.
It's a request for a local upgrade approval with Jim Neva from Dunn McKenzie Engineering. The request is to allow more than 4 feet of cover over the septic tank as allowed by DEP policy.
Okay.
And you just need to read the variant, the
Preamble. Yep.
Preamble.
So a variance hearing from the Board of Health Regulations is called to order for 43 Cleveland Street. It is my duty to inform you that you will have to provide the Board of Health with data to support your request for a waiver of Board of Health requirements, and that if you do not receive the waiver, it will do you manifest injustice. You will also have to show that what you intend to do is environmentally acceptable.
All right, Jimmy, you just need to unmute yourself and explain about the project. Oh, Jim, you're still muted.
Still muted. There we go.
How you doing? My name is Jim Neva from Dunn McKenzie. We're asking for a variance at 43 Cleveland Street to have a cover over the tank of about 4.5 feet of soil, only because it's an older house and I'm trying to use the existing inverts that are coming out of the old house, and in running the numbers, the tank is the highest that I could get, it's an H20 tank, very, it's very durable. So we're just trying to not have to rip up the backyard and make a swale and, a hole there either. So.
Matt, do you have any comments?
I did review the plan and I don't have any issues as it's proposed. The house is several hundred years old. And if the existing plumbing out of the house, I mean, it's in good shape, can remain. I think that'll be beneficial. They do have risers to within 6 inches of grade. On the plan that would be required for maintenance purposes. And the only other comment would be the H20 loading, which has already been addressed. So I'm fine with it as it's presented.
Other members of the board, do we have any comments or questions?
I have none.
Liz, do you have any? No? Okay.
And just that for a note, the tank would not be within the water table as well, even though it is lower in the ground. It's still out of the water table, so there's no concern there.
Great, thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Do I have a motion from a member of the board? Not sure if I can use that motion, Andy, but.
Sorry, yeah, and he's outside about 60 feet away from me too. So you can imagine at 130 pounds, he's going to be coming in. My daughter just got home
Is
from
it-
work.
Yeah, is that Wilson?
That's Wilson. Yes.
I think he made that motion to accept the variance.
So I'll make a motion to accept the plans for 43 Cleveland Street with the requested variance.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Do you have any further discussion? No. All in favor?
Andy Bakunowski, aye.
Liz Gebhardt, aye.
Cheryl Dunnington, aye. So the motion's been accepted. Thank you, Mr. Neva.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you,
night.
Jim. Have a great
Thank
night.
you. You too, Betsy. Thank you.
Next on our agenda is the appointment of Olivia Dufour. I see Olivia is on.
Olivia is on. Olivia is from the Metro West Tobacco Control District, and she's here to give us an update on what we've been working on. Hey, Olivia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me at your Board of Health meeting. It's always nice to get to kind of see faces and put faces to names on all of these types of things. I'm happy to give a quick overview of sort of what I do, what the program does, if that would be helpful for members of the board. So my name is Olivia Dufour. I am the Tobacco Control Program Manager for the Metro West Tobacco Control District, which is a lot of words, but it essentially means that I run the tobacco control for 13 cities and towns in the Metro West area. We're based out of the Framingham Health Department, so that's where I am right now, but I service, again, those 13 towns and cities doing their tobacco control work. So we do retail education inspections where we visit tobacco retailers to educate them on state and local tobacco law to make sure that they're following those state and local tobacco law and regulations. And we do compliance checks, which is where we send youth buyers who are under the age of 21 into establishments to ensure that they're not selling tobacco to folks who are under 21, among some other things. But those are really the main pieces. I'm here to talk just like a little bit about one of the nitpicky things with the state tobacco law that was passed back in December of 2019. That went into effect June of 2020. And that is the law that sort of officially set the tobacco age to 21 across Massachusetts without any more of the grandfathering in of folks who had turned 18 before a certain time. It also banned all flavored products, including mint and menthol across the Commonwealth, as well as setting some limitations on the nicotine content of vape products. There's also some language in there about what signs retailers have to have up. These manufacturer's letter requirements, which is something we've been going over with retailers for the last year or so. And those are really sort of the biggest pieces of that state law. But one of the biggest changes on the retailer side, aside from no longer being able to sell flavored products, including mint and menthol, is the change to the fining structure. So the state implemented their own fining structure for tobacco violations. Previously, all tobacco violations were pretty much handled under the local tobacco regulations on a town-by-town basis. And the state set their regulation fine as $1,000 for the first offense, $2,000 and up to a 7-day permit suspension for the second offense, and $5,000 and up to a 30-day permit suspension for the third offense. And that is within a 36-month or 3-year tolling period. So those violations do go away if the retailer maintains compliance for 3 years. One fun detail that sort of got passed over in all of the hecticness that was implementing a new statewide tobacco law during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic was the state put some language in ahead of the violation. And I'm happy to send over a document that has this like in words for you all to look at. That says that if a first violation, so only a first violation, is a sale to a minor, then the business shall have a suspension of between 1 and 30 days. And that's at the discretion of the Board of Health. So there's technically in the state law, no suspension on a first violation. But if that first violation is a sale to a minor, then there is a suspension that needs to be determined by the Board of Health somewhere in the range of 1 to 30 days. If I'm looking at Norfolk, the current Norfolk regs don't have a suspension for a first violation either. So there's also no precedent in the local regulations for us to lean back on in the case that somebody sells to a minor and it's their first violation. So I'm kind of going around to all of my boards of health, letting them know about this piece of the state law. And I'm asking that folks sort of either think about or decide on a number of days that they'd like to use as a precedent in the event that that happens, just because we want to make sure that that regulation is doled out the same and equally for all violators. Because it's a piece of the state law, there's no need to sort of, open up the regulations or do any type of a hearing, because we're just following the state law, which supersedes local, unless the local is stricter, which in this case it's not. Typically boards are deciding on a number of days. I've been seeing 1 to 3 as the most common. Typically 3 days being probably the most common that we're seeing with boards who are doing this across the state. And so I'm just here to bring that to your attention. If you'd like to make a decision today, you can. If we'd like to sort of kick it down the road a bit, that's also fine. But just want to make sure that all of the any type of enforcement that we're doing is consistent across all the retailers in Norfolk.
You were talking about the suspension. What towns are doing the suspension and what does that entail? What are they described it as?
Yes, so we have many towns have a suspension for their second and third offense. Not so common the first offense either, so this is new for a lot of people. But when we do a suspension, essentially what we'll do is go into the retailer. They have the opportunity when we send them the violation, they can ask for a hearing before the Board of Health. We go through all those pieces. Once we've found and determined that they are responsible for that violation, the board usually will decide on the days that suspension will be from. So let's say they have a 3-day violation, you'll say, oh, it'll be from Tuesday, October 25th through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, October 27th. And they'll have to remove all of their tobacco products from the shelf. Typically, we ask that they remove them from the premises, but we will allow them to sort of seal it in boxes, and I can sign the tape. So that way we know that those boxes haven't been opened during the duration of the suspension. And then I would go and check in with that business pretty much every day that suspension is happening to ensure that they are no longer selling tobacco. If we hear word that they might be selling tobacco, we could send in an undercover buyer, those kinds of things. So really, they're just not allowed to sell any tobacco products for the duration of that suspension.
And our communities around us, do we have a number as to what they're actually doing at this point in time?
I'm looking at my cheat sheet. I have a couple of communities who have a first offense suspension written into their regulations. Both of those are 3 days consecutively. And then of the other communities that I've brought this issue to, 3 days has generally been the decided on amount. 1 day just seems a little ridiculous to have them take all the products out and then do that enforcement for the 1 day. But typically we're seeing 3 days, I would say.
Any comments from the board members?
No, it seems like 3 days would be reasonable, but I don't have any other questions regarding the removal of the products or anything like that.
Yeah, Cheryl, just as long as we can be consistent on what others are doing, I think that would be the
That was why.
most preferred. And I guess there's always going to be an exception to the rule, but I guess we cross that bridge when we come to it. So.
Does the board want to think about this and maybe discuss it and vote on it for next meeting, or feel that putting it into our bylaws for 3 days, or maybe just having it that it's case by case when people come to us and we can make the decision at that point in time?
No, I have three trains of thought on this one. I think just to be consistent, if Olivia can send Betsy language that other folks have,
Yep.
so we can be consistent. That's the first thing. The second thing is the, there's always the interpretation of a violation versus an egregious violation. And like, do we want to get into that deep of the weeds to try and figure out, was there a problem? Or was there misunderstanding? And that's always a difficult thing to do. And then the third thing is that would there be appeal process?
Mhm.
Those are the three things.
Yeah, I'm happy to clarify a little bit about that. So I'm happy to send Betsy the language in the state law. We don't have like anything written. I can put together, I can find, I think it was one of the most recent board meetings that I did this with was Hopkinton. I'm happy to find the language that they used when they made a motion, if that would be helpful.
Mhm.
Send that over to Betsy as well. The state law pretty much says if the sale to a minor happened, then it happened. There's not a ton of interpretation or wiggle room on giving them those fines or giving them that suspension, but they do have an appeal process. So when we send them the violation from the date that they receive it, we send that violation via regular mail and certified mail.
Mhm.
So we have the certified mail date for when they received it. They have 7 days from the date they received the violation to make a written appeal with the Board of Health. And then they would attend, the next Board of Health meeting. We would go through sort of it's a bit of an informal hearing process. I don't know that it counts as like a full public hearing, but we'll go through, they can come in, make their case. I would come in, present the evidence that I have for the violation. That's typically, like the inspection report, pictures of the product, so on and so forth. And then from there, the board basically decides, did it happen or did it not happen? And then from there, if they're unhappy with that decision, that's when they can take it and go to district court. But the state law sort of took some of the what's what I'm looking for. It's kind of very cut and dry about, do we have probable cause to think that it did happen or that it didn't happen? Not necessarily a full on yes or no, as it would be in a court decision.
Well, I think that would be great if you could send the information to Betsy and then she can distribute it and then the board can review it.
And make sure perfect. And then also I did the retail education inspections for Norfolk back in August, and we didn't have any violations. So we're seeing really good compliance with the state and local laws. So always very happy to see that.
Good. That's good. Awesome. Any other comments from the board?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Olivia.
Absolutely. Anytime. Happy to come back whenever you guys have a tobacco related question.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks, Olivia.
All right. Next is the minutes. So review and approve the minutes from 8/23/22. Any comments from the board? Nope.
Nope.
No, I have none.
Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from 8/23/22?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from. Remember the date.
8/23.
8/22, so long ago.
Yeah.
8/22.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Andy Bakunowski, aye.
Liz Gephardt, aye.
Cheryl Dennington, aye. Okay, the minutes have been approved. All right, new business. So we have Matt discuss updates to well regulations and also discuss the 115 Park Street complaint. Matt, you're on.
Sure. Start with the well regulations. Just more or less two parts, I guess, to this. The first part, which Betsy had sent over as a draft, is regarding irrigation wells. We have currently no regulations regarding irrigation wells, other than the little bit that the state has within the Title V regulations. I think we get a fair share of requests for irrigation wells. So I think just putting some parameters on it to make sure that the groundwater is not overtaxed, if you will, and that wells are placed in appropriate areas is certainly important. So pretty much what was presented would be my recommendation. The setbacks specifically to the septic system components is double. I think actually that the tank is a little more than double than what the state minimum requirements are. It is half of what a potable well is. Again, just making sure that the wells maintain a appropriate distance from property lines and structures. And I think a big part is that, again, the well's located on the lot that it serves, and that we get an appropriate plan, well report submitted to us, similar to what we do for potable wells, and just any area between the wellhead and spigots or lines, that there just be some type of permanent notification that says it's not potable in some form, whether, you know, for irrigation only or not potable or do not drink. I think a big concern that a lot of health agents have and boards have is that, you know, when you're looking at an irrigation well versus a potable well, you know, who's to say that someone doesn't pick up a hose and drink from an irrigation well and it could be contaminated with bacteria from a leaching field or whatnot. So, you know, if there's at least notification that this is an irrigation well, the spigot is, you know, from an irrigation well, it's not potable, don't drink. At least there is notice there, and hopefully would keep people from drinking water that potentially could not be a potable source. Of course, as always, open for thoughts, comments, discussion. Part two, I haven't had a chance to get real deep into it, and Mr. Baskinowski had wanted to sit down at some point with you regarding the testing parameters, updating what we require for testing parameters for sure, especially to include the PFAS and the within it. It's an increasing problem. I think it's all very new. I actually have one of the seminars in the conference I'll be at later this week is going to cover part of that. So I'll be interested to see what the state is thinking about it. Maybe what other towns are doing as well. So,
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah, Matt, I think the chemical testing is definitely something we need to kind of figure out. The few questions I have, I'm looking at my other screen here where the regulations are up, so bear with me. The placement of the well next to other wells of 50 feet, you know, obviously any irrigation well or any type of supply well for a home is typically a bedrock well, so it's down pretty far. And 50 feet, and given the fracture nature that you're going to be intercepting, you know, the question then becomes, will that well dry up the potable water well? I mean, that's something too. I mean, I think we probably need to, I'm not going to say throw more science at it, but we probably should get some sort of a professional opinion as to whether that well will affect the potable water well. And the other question is that what if the neighbor's well is 62 feet away from it on the other property line, and there's an effect as well? I mean, given this year, and I'm saying based on the water levels I've seen of some sites that I've been working on over the summertime, I mean, absolutely crazy stuff has gone on this year. And this is definitely an extreme. It's not the norm. But again, you know, a lot of these are shallow surface. I mean, they're not bedrock wells, and bedrock wells, you know, tend to fluctuate a little quicker because the recharge is much slower than an overburden well. So that's something I think we need to think about, of, you know, impacting other wells as well as the site's well. And then the other thing too is that we need to definitely put in here is that obviously a plumbing, some sort of plumbing permit is required. You know, people will you've got to have some sort of pump, you've got to have some sort of electrical as well, to get the water out of the well. So I think we need to make sure that that's in the checkbox as well. So where's the other one? The one thing that I don't know, I mean, if anybody's talked to me, they take the last 20 years, one of my big things has been, once we stop fighting for oil, we're going to start fighting about water. And my concern is that if you have a lot of irrigation wells just outside zone ones of some of the pumping wells in town, and I'll use the Gold Street well as an example. There's not a lot of development there, but something can happen over the next 10, 15 years. Will those irrigation wells, if every single house put an irrigation well, and there are some pretty big houses going in that general area, will that affect the water supply to the town? I mean, this is an issue that I don't have any answers for, but it can be a problem in the future, and that's what I would like to try and avoid. So that's all I've got right now, but we can definitely talk about the chemical testing. I will email you offline what I would like to see for testing, not only volatiles, but also some pesticides and common fertilizing compounds that are put on grasses, to make sure that we're covering all the bases. So
Certainly.
Okay.
I mean, there's certainly an option to put exclusion zones, within a certain distance of public water supply wells, things like that. That would be an option in order to protect, the supply in future years. That's certainly an option.
Yeah. And again, the other option too is, does the person who wants to put an irrigation well in, and if they are near a zone 1 of a pumping well, or let's just say they're 300 feet away, you get an engineering report done. Obviously, it's going to add more cost. And the question is, I mean, you're kind of sort of compounding this problem. And again, are irrigation wells an absolute necessity? If you're a farm, I can see that being needed. But again, I don't know about you, my grass came back pretty well this year after being burned out. And we don't irrigate. And I mean, maybe an educational course on turf management might be necessary, in addition to this. Again, I know we're getting off the topic here, but this is something that, I mean, this year was an extreme year for lack of rainfall. But again, the grass has come back well. So, and we don't have an irrigation system, so I can speak firsthand experience that way. So I don't know. I don't think we can make many decisions tonight, but Matt, you and I can talk offline.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. I think this will be an ongoing for the next few months.
Yeah.
Or and I just, before we were to advertise for any public hearing, I want to make sure everything across the whole regulation is updated to where the board is happy, from irrigation wells to any even potable drinking well changes to testing requirements. Certainly a public hearing for wells similar to Title V regulations is more substantial than some other local regulations. So I'd like to see everything done in one shot, and have everything done prior, so everybody's happy. And it's a well put together regulation.
Okay.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Andy. It's definitely not in my wheelhouse about wells, so. But
it can get complicated, and I don't want to overburden people at the same time. I mean, obviously, if you look out west, the water rights and who has access to the aquifers, that's becoming an issue because of the droughts, the long-term drought they've had out there. But this summer, we kind of dodged a bullet. I know we're still behind in rainfall, but it's gonna be a problem. It's gonna be a problem. So.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Matt, the 115 Park Street complaint. I don't know if Betsy, if you want to do a preface, or Matt, you want to explain what the complaint was?
So I haven't actually received any formal complaint to the Board of Health regarding that site. There's been a lot with zoning board and conservation, but have had some questions sent my way and have had some discussion about the property. The two main complaints, if you will, or concerns, I think would be a better way to put it. One was and I did do a site visit last Thursday.
Mhm.
There's a couple larger piles of material
Mhm.
that there was a question of if it was septic related
Mhm.
material or old septic laden material. Certainly the person who is leasing some of that property runs a septic business, and there was concern that what they took out of the ground when they do a septic system is contaminated with sewage, and that was being stockpiled there. The vast majority of the time when a septic repair occurs, the existing system, if it's a pit or a single cesspool,
Mhm.
those pits are pumped and then just crushed and filled in place. And of course, that sewage that's pumped from there goes to a treatment facility and it's pumped out of the truck and it would never be on the farm. And if it's an actual leaching field with pipe and stone, or it could be galleys, usually that's abandoned in place. Very, very rarely is that system removed for the new system you put in. Usually that would only occur if it was an extremely small lot or constricting lot. And it's very rare. When that material is removed, usually it's sent somewhere to be processed properly. So as part of my site visit, I examined all the material that was there. Certainly it's not a scientific test, but there were no odors from it.
Mhm.
There were several workers out there and all of them confirmed that no, it's the material that is brought from the septic jobs is from the dig out of naturally occurring material on the sites. There may be an excavation, could be a couple feet, could be, I've seen them, 10, 12, 15 feet, a significant amount of material that has to be removed. And then it's, that hole is filled with Title V perk sand.
Mhm.
So that material it's brought to this farm, and I believe that person screens it and uses that loam for the farming practices. So I had no issues as far as sewage related material being on site. I took a walk throughout the whole site and had zero odors. No evidence of any sewage
Mhm.
being stored on site there. As far as any nuisance related odors, as far that would agriculture is not exempt from, would be like dust.
Mhm.
And the while I was there, I mean, it was a drier day, I didn't have any dust concerns. The couple piles of the loam material does have significant vegetation growth on at least 2 to 3 of the sides, if you will, of a pile, to hold and stabilize the pile in place. So as far as dust concerns right now, I don't have any major issue. Of course, usually the dust issues become a problem in June, July, and August. So that's okay. I believe there was a question regarding swine, potential swine, of upwards of 400 possibly. I've talked to the person who had stated that he would get 400 pigs, and that is not true. If that was, that would wind up being a pretty substantial Department of Agriculture
Mhm.
permit and process that they would have to follow. They don't have the area for it. They don't have the facilities to house that many pigs. There was a small, very small structure. I think they had 4 or 5 chickens. If they were to get pigs, they could probably have 1 or 2, which doesn't violate the zoning
Mhm.
requirements of maximum 5. And again, it wasn't near the property lines. That structure was not near the property lines. I think the only other issue I had heard was regarding runoff from a horse facility that's uphill from that farm area. I'd have to get permission and have a complaint to be able to do a full inspection of that facility. I did talk to the conservation agent, and she did say that the conservation commissioner herself are working on evaluating the contaminated runoff, if you will, from that horse arena. It seems like any contamination related to that is from the horse urine from the corral or arena. So that right now I don't have any Board of Health violations on that site. I was given an open invitation to periodically be able to just go on to that farm and evaluate the practices. So I can certainly keep an eye on it. If there's any Board of Health violations, we can take care of it for sure.
Okay, thank you. Andy, do you have any comments or questions? I know you had a few questions when the letter came out.
Yeah, just looking at the email I had sent to Caitlin, and you guys, I know she and I had talked about things to test for, but that's from their perspective. I guess, Matt, from my perspective of the setbacks of where stables are, where horse manure is for the adjacent property, is there that much material, or is it just because the proximity to the areas where it's running off to? Is that something? Do you have a sense of where or how far that is? This is kind of like a deja vu situation where we're on Miller Street. 20 years ago, there was a horse farm that's over there. It's still a horse farm, but it's now has since changed owners like 3 or 4 times since then. And they had the owner had cut drainage channels into the river. And that was something that the Conservation Commission, required that they put some sort of swale or detention swale, and they did some work, and then eventually the number of horses actually dropped. So obviously it's kind of became a non-issue. So I guess the question is, are there that many horses, or is it just based on proximity to sensitive areas that the impact from runoff is a problem, or is it not a problem and it's just a storage problem of where they're putting material?
I think it's up gradient, and it's running, the runoff is running downhill, and unfortunately it's running directly just the way it's channeled through the natural grade channels down to that one particular property. It looks like they did dig and put in some type of catch basin, if you will, crude catch basin with some stone to try to alleviate some of that runoff. I'm not quite sure how many horses they have on that site. Certainly, I think from talking to Caitlin, the ground around the corrals there had been a proper material, but over time, as the horses are on it, it compacts, and then it no longer becomes permeable. And that creates that runoff. I think that's the issue, is at this point that material is not permeable to the extent that it used to be, and it's creating that runoff of the material from the horse farm. Between you get the mix of the urine and the other horse wastes there. As far as solid waste from the horses, it's easy to put some type of recommendation and say, needs to be collected and stored, in a container or whatnot. When it comes to liquid waste, that's a little hard to contain per se. Maybe a little more evaluation. Like I said, I hadn't evaluated the horse issue yet. I just started to talk to Caitlin about that. Once I get in there and I can see how many horses they have and see the corrals and the compaction of the material, maybe we can try to work with the owner to maybe put different material in to help that runoff, or maybe different swales to contain it better.
Okay. Yeah, I know nothing about horses other than I know my son they have 2 at where he lives, and they have standard operating procedures that have been in place for a very long time, because the people beforehand, they actually have set areas to put manure. And obviously, if the ground is that compacted, the question is, are they doing proper maintenance of the rings and of the areas of the pens where they're holding the horses? Because I know horses can have sensitive feet, and the footing is always a problem too. So is that something that I don't know, again, I'm not sure if animal control has some suggestions on how to, what they should be doing, more for care of the horses rather than the actual, the maintenance of the area. So it seems like we got a couple, we're kind of getting a snowball effect here of things keep bunching up on this. And, again, is the facility, adequately being managed to, for the protection of the animals there too. And that's another question. And if they're not maintaining the surface material such that it's that compacted, what else are they skipping? So, because I know horses can deal with some of the hard stuff, but again, it can be hard on their feet too. So I don't know. So, but if you want, I can send you the email I sent to Caitlin just about the testing that might want to be done. I mean, it's just so you know, it looks at nitrogen loading and bacteria, suspended solids, turbidity, pH, hydrogen sulfide, that type of stuff. Typical stuff that's from animal waste. So
Sure.
I could send it to you. So okay. So I guess stay tuned.
Yeah. Like I said, as far as the farm area and 115 Park Street, I was given an open invitation to periodically come in and review what's going on there. The horse arena, it's a different owner up on the top of the hill there. So I'll be getting with Caitlin and hopefully be able to get in there and evaluate that site a little better in the near future.
Okay.
Thank you. So Betsy, have we responded back to the individual who sent us the email? And maybe we can respond back with some of Matt's comments. And
Sure. I don't recall if we've responded to him yet. But we can.
that would be great. And then Matt, maybe next month you can give us an update on the horses.
Absolutely.
That'd be great. Fantastic. All right, next, the Southwood property. I know we got an email and Andy wanted to talk about that.
Let's say the response to the comments that were prepared back in July, August, a response came back that let's just say it's a very high level of general disagreement of the comments. The word unsubstantiated was used several times in some of the comments as it applies to it. Mm-hmm. And not going into details, it's a 609-page report, which it was made available on for last Friday. And unfortunately, I just haven't had time to read the whole thing, but I did go through a few areas, and it's the most notable thing is that the old data that's being used to try and make a decision, while yes, as an LSP, I've done that. At the same time, though, is they seem to be relying heavily on the dependence of that data and whether it's valid to use as part of the risk assessment and defines the extent. If I was doing this, I wouldn't trust it because this is 25-year-old data. So that's some of the issues. The biggest issue that they did some radioactivity assessments in the filter beds and in other areas, and the reluctance to put up signage in some areas or fencing or some side of deterrent to get into those areas, because they did find levels that were above the Department of Health standards, Department of Public Health standards. At the same time, they weren't really clear on where exactly they found them, but at the same time, they had said that there was a difficulty getting in there because the area is so overgrown. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to look at some point. So I don't know if they're waiting for wintertime when the leaves are coming off the trees, or I just don't know. I don't know what they're waiting for. There's a little bit of uncertainty, and I'll call it frustration for lack of a better word, on what's going on out there. The landfill that's out there, even though it's called a landfill, it's actually just a dumping ground because it's not a permitted landfill. What still is kind of unclear to me is why they're treating it as a landfill, and their assessment of it. And they dug a few holes. They claimed they didn't find anything. But again, they just apparently did. They dug one line, that was parallel to Route 1A. And I know why they couldn't go the other areas because the vegetation is so overgrown. But going back from memory of 20 plus years ago when I was out there, I mean, there were refrigerators and there was an x-ray machine and there's other debris that was dumped there, whether it's hospital debris or others were coming in to dump it there. I don't know. They didn't find it. I don't know exactly where they look relative to those because things have changed a bit, but I have talked with the LSP of record and he's anxious to try and get out there because there are several piles of material that are questionable on the access roads that go towards the ball fields. And from my perspective and having been on sites like that, they kind of make you go, what is this stuff? Because you can tell it's not normal. The vegetation looks weird and it's just an abnormal feature that could be something good, could be something bad, could be, it needs some investigation. So hopefully that will happen sooner than later. But I know we could have snow in the next month. So who knows when that's going to happen. But there's the reports on the DEP website. Like I said, it's 609 pages. It's an incredibly long document, and I have not been able to plow through more than 35 pages of it. I mean, I skipped the first 20. So because it's all just sort of the background information stuff we kind of knew. They did, as you know, they did find PFAS in 3 locations that were above standards. That constituted a new release tracking number to be issued. They basically have a year to try and address that and assess that. It's my hope that they kind of take that cue and use that information and the work and that effort to try and define other things that need to be defined on the property as well. The remaining contamination that's there still is the petroleum. I know that they know it's in the tunnel system, under the tunnel systems and under the buildings, in some areas coming from the power plant. There's some of the other concerns related to the former underground storage tanks, residual contamination that's still there, that needs to be assessed a little further. But the one thing that they didn't do that was requested by DEP was to put what they call well couplets in, basically 2 wells in the same borehole. One gets drilled deeper and actually it's sealed off from the upper aquifer. The second part of the couplet, the higher part of the couplet, is actually screened, 10, 20, 30 feet above that. And they want to see if there's any migration downward of this material. Some of the material is equal to or slightly heavier than water in terms of specific gravity. So if it's more than 1, it'll sink. If it's a petroleum product or a solvent product that's in the petroleum range, it will float or basically will not. It won't sink. But other coordinated solvents that have been used on the property could be found at lower depth. So that was not done. Is it going to be done? I hope so. I don't know when though, because that was not discussed at all in the report that I read so far. So.
And are we also posting the report on our website for the town, or is it just the DEP?
It's just on the DEP website. I mean, it's a huge, Betsy, I can send you the link. Again, it takes my computer at home 2 minutes to upload this document to review it. It's huge. And the report prior to that was over 600 pages as well. And that one takes just as long. So these are huge reports. And again, if you want, I can send the links to Betsy, and Betsy, you can see if it doesn't crash the network. I don't know. I just don't know how useful it'll be if we can't get those up.
Yeah, I think I have I know I have the link to the Buckley Man DEP site.
Yeah.
I'll have to check the website and see if I have a link to the DEP Southwood site.
Okay. I can send it to you. After we're done here, I'll send that to you.
Thank you.
So, but again, that one has reports going back to the early to mid 90s. But again, that if you go to that link and you'll see the folder, you'll be able to see all the reports, which actually may be easier than actually downloading the actual PDF of the report.
Yeah, no, at least if people are interested, they can get the link from our site. Perfect.
Okay.
Buckley Man. Anything there?
You saw that report from Weston and Sampson. And I think the email I had sent to folks about that, they've got to do more assessment out there. There's some concerns. I was a little disappointed that they didn't include the issue of downgrading property status, because the receiving water is downgrading from Buckley Man is town property.
Mhm.
And this was discussed when De Placido was doing work out there, that, you know, that you're going to have a flood event and this material is going to be carried down. The PCBs generally do not dissolve in water at the same time as any sediment that's carried down that has PCBs adhered to it, it will be carried downstream and it's going to accumulate in City Mills Pond. I mean, that's where, you know, that's the first calm area. I mean, you may have some scattered here and there down the stream, but at the same time, you know, it's, you know, it's a concern. Metals that they found as well. They did find low levels of PFAS as well, but again, the understanding of the hydrogeology of that area is not well known, as well as the movement of PFAS in the subsurface in those conditions is not well known either. So, you know, that's the question that it's got to be asked. I had heard secondhand, Betsy, maybe you know that there was a prospective buyer that was going to buy this property back in August. I checked the registry of deeds. There's been no transfer of property as of yesterday. Any idea? Was this a rumor, or did you hear anything in the office?
I don't. That would be a question for Rich McCarthy.
Okay.
Andy, I believe that there is a prospective buyer. I think they're doing their due diligence at this point and fact finding regarding the contamination and existing reports before they make a decision and move forward. I don't recall who that buyer was. Rich would know.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, no, it's, I mean, this, just like the Buckley Man, the Buckley Man site, just like Southwood site, I mean, there's still a lot of holes that are in there. You know, when you look back at the work that was done in 2000, when they supposedly closed the site, and after they built the AUL and buried all that stuff there, I mean, the reason why the site was removed from the closure lists is because they never did what's called an ecological risk assessment. And that's, you know, that has to be done. And that still has not been done. The site is out of compliance and the DEP seems to be just sort of, I guess it's okay. But I mean, it's just kind of, let's just say it's an unusual contrast compared to DEP stance on other sites. So it's just, yeah, it's, I have no idea what they're thinking. I mean, I don't know, maybe worthwhile to maybe just draft a letter to DEP and ask, you know, what's the deal? What's going on? I know that the owners, the trust that owns the property is part of the Buckley Man Trust, and that organization, they did get what's called a financial inability statement, but that's only good for 1 year, and that expired almost a year and a half ago. So, you know, that kind of gives them a little bit of time, but they still should be doing stuff. And, you know, I mean, they aren't being good neighbors, I guess is a good way of putting it. You know, they just seem to be letting things go. But again, you know, the property value is so cheap because of the unknowns and contamination, you know, that may be an acceptable strategy. But again, you know, I mean, DEP should be on top of this stuff. And as I wrote in that email to everyone, the fact that we're looking at 350 parts per million of PCBs in one location, that's close enough to the Mill River. And based on my experience, I have no idea why the EPA punted this site. I mean, they were out there, they did, you know, they did a lot of testing, probably spent $50,000 to $100,000 in assessment. And they said it doesn't warrant, you know, their action. So that, to me, that just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because based on my experience of their involvement with sites with much lower levels of PCBs. So I don't know. So.
Okay. So would you be like willing to write them a letter?
Oh yeah, I can. Yeah, I'll draft. I can draft a letter up before the next meeting, and we can discuss it. And
Perfect.
you know, I think just by expressing some concern about, you know, like what are they doing?
Right.
I'll be the first to admit. I mean, having some of the clients I've worked for, where if you're in this situation, that you don't have the finances to continue the work. I mean, sending a quarterly letter to DEP saying, look, here's what we're trying to do. We're trying, and you basically, lay yourself out for DEP's mercy to say, look, we're trying to get this done, but here's the problems. And I mean, obviously confidential business issues and stuff like that, you try to be very diplomatic on how you're saying it, but at the same time, you just don't go dark and just do nothing. So.
Thank you for those updates.
Okay.
I have a feeling you'll be updating that for a long time around here, so.
I think so too.
Yeah. All right. Next thing on the agenda is set meeting schedule, fourth Tuesday of the month. We have November 29th and December 27th. Do those dates work with everybody?
The 29th is technically the 5th Tuesday of the month, but
Oh,
the 4th Tuesday is Thanksgiving week and I'm away. So
okay.
if that works, does that work for everybody?
I can
November 29th works for me. Is there any flexibility to the December 27th one? It's just kids' vacation week.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Yes.
You think of moving that to the 20th?
The 20th, yeah.
If that's okay with everybody.
Let me
Yeah.
let me just check one thing on my calendar. So
Actually, I can't do the 20th.
you can't do the 20th.
No, I have concert tickets.
You didn't invite us?
You can go with Brett Eldridge at the, I think it's at the Orpheum Theater in Boston.
Oh, yeah, you'll be trying to find parking. Would Monday the 19th work? It is the first day of Hanukkah, but Monday the 19th or and then what else? I mean, Wednesday the 21st.
I'm good with any of those.
Either of those 3 days are good.
Yeah. So Betsy, I don't know if there's a conflict with anybody, other groups on either the 19th or 21st.
Yeah, well, not so much because we've been doing Zoom, so
Yeah.
we're, that gives us some flexibility. So you want to shoot for the 19th?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. We'll do it.
11:29 and 12:19.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Do we have any unanticipated new business? Betsy?
I
No.
have none.
Matt? No? Okay. Do I have a motion to end the meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn, and wow, we went almost an hour.
Yeah,
I'll second the motion.
all in favor?
Andy Bakunowski, aye.
Liz Gephardt, aye.
And I apologize, I didn't ask for more discussion, but I didn't think we really needed any more. Cheryl Huntington, aye. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank
Okay.
you.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Thanks.
night.
Night, thank you.
Good night.
Mm.